Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Now, I'm doing another world opinion piece, but today I'm doing it without the sunglasses for a few reasons. One, I'm more tired than usual. I'm just kind of tired. I don't really feel like, having a kind of hyper personality right now. It's just not what I'm into. Two, I think yesterday when I talked about Azteca, obviously I was over exaggerating with to match the sunglasses, and I think that offended some people. You're not the spawn of Satan, probably, if you like Azteca. I'm sorry about that, but I'm only saying this because I think I didn't get a lot of dislikes on that video, but I did lose like 10 subs. So I think people were a little bit unhappy, and you know what? That's okay. So you know what? I'm going to refrain from calling you guys the spawn of Satan. But whatever, that intro's out of the way. Let's talk about another world, because I like talking about worlds like this. I like giving my opinion on these worlds. And this is one that I think is kind of a controversial one. And that is Zafaria is actually one of my favorite worlds. And I think it's heavily underrated. And the reason why I say this is because everyone I've really, not everyone I've met, but a lot of people, when I talk to them about different worlds, a lot of them think Zafaria is either lackluster or just kind of a mid-tier world. And I really heavily disagree with that. I've always loved Zafaria. I think it's one of the best worlds in this game for quite a lot of reasons. And I really do think it's underrated. So let's get into that. First off, the pacing is good. You can see my script there in the chat, as always. The pacing's very good in this world, I would say. It's one of the best. It doesn't overstay its welcome, which is really, really good. I'd say that a lot of worlds, their biggest problem is that they kind of drag on, right? Like, Azteca has, like, 200 quests. Chrysalis has 300 quests. And, there's a lot of, like, long streets that just make you really want to die. Another really big example of this for me is in Celestia with Crustacean Empire. Crustacean Empire is one of the longest, it feels like it's one of the longest streets in this game, and I think realistically it is. Like, even when I'm boosting myself, like I'm power questing a character, it still takes an hour to beat Crustacean Empire. And I'd say that Zafaria doesn't really fall into that with any street. I would say that most of the streets are reasonable in length, with maybe Drum Jungle being the one exception, with it being a bit too long, I would say. But honestly, most streets are very well paced and very fun too. And I think, expanding on that fun part, let's go into the game features. I would say that the enemies are very well balanced for the level. You're going into this world at level 60, and you're coming out at about level 70. And I would like to say that the enemies do almost perfectly, in my opinion, reflect that. The bosses have around 6k health, and the street enemies have about 1 to 2k health. Excuse me. I think that this is really, really good for the level, and it doesn't feel too over-leveled. And I would say that this is my problem with a lot of the other worlds, and they kind of fixed this with the 20% health reduction update. But a lot of the worlds, the enemies are either too strong or they're a little bit, just out of place. And I think this is especially true with, like, Azteca. A lot of the bosses are actually Chrysalis level health-wise and damage-wise. And that's kind of whack. I think it's funny because, like, if you look at the bosses on paper, a lot of them, there's virtually no difference between the Aztecan bosses and the Chrysalis bosses. They both have, like, around 14 to 16k health. They're both pretty darn powerful, have dual typings, all that kind of stuff. I would say that what it should be, I can make a whole video out of this, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But I'd say Zafaria is a really good point to follow, is that it's about 6k. You just got Waterworks gear, so every boss is really balanced with that. Everything has 6k for bosses, 1k for enemies, and this should scale up continuing with that. I think Avalon should have about 8 to 10k, which it kind of does. Sometimes it has a little bit more, but I think it's pretty good as well. And then Azteca is where it starts to fall off. But I'd say balance, pretty good. Also, I can't see my screen. I think I already mentioned all these. But one thing I'd like to mention that I talked about last one is that a lot of people mention that the aesthetic, I just had a lisp there while I was talking. The aesthetic of Azteca is really good. A lot of people like it, which I understand. I think it's pretty good too in a lot of places. In some places, I don't like it, like Salt Meadow Swamp. Who likes a swamp? If you like a swamp, you're weird. But good on you, I guess. It's just, I've never liked swampy areas. I think that they look ugly, and they look sad. I don't really like Salt Meadow Swamp at all. I think it's one of the worst streets in the game, and in Azteca specifically. But we're not talking about Azteca. I think Zafaria's aesthetic is super cool. It's like, it's not that I dislike the tribal aesthetic that Azteca has as well, because I love Zafaria. I think Zafaria explores this tribal aesthetic very well and very interestingly. One of my favorite quest lines in this, not in the game, but one of my favorite quest lines in Arc 2 is the one where we have to talk to these two leaders of the tribe, or two leaders of the soldiers, and basically they're fighting within themselves, and then we're kind of the negotiator, you know, the peace mediator, and we solve the issues for them and kind of, you know, realize, you know, basically we're just a negotiator, which is pretty sick. I like that. And I think this world has a lot of quest lines like that. I like that the whole premise of it is that we're finding the lost students. I think that that's a really good premise. And it feels like you're finding them too fast, but the funny thing is that the world isn't even that long. The world is only like, I think it's only 100 quests, maybe, give or take. Definitely not a bad world in length at all, in my opinion. You could definitely finish it in quite a few hours, but within one day. Man, I've already been talking for 7 minutes. That's really all I wanted to say. I think Zafaria is heavily underrated. I would like to know your opinions below, and you know, it's okay to disagree with me. You're not the spawn of Satan for disagreeing with me. You know, I don't think that that's a bad thing necessarily. I like to see the comments, and I like to respond to them or read your opinions, because I think it's very interesting. Because not everyone's going to think the same, you know? Like, I'm willing to bet most people are going to disagree with me on this video. Most people are going to say Zafaria bad, and I'm going to be like, oh, but why? You know, and I think that's a fair discussion to have. I have quite a few more opinions like this on some worlds, you know, that people disagree with. But either way, you know, that's it for today's video. Let me know, because I want to know. If you enjoyed, drop a like at the sub button. If you disagreed, you know, let me know. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a fantastic day. Peace.